In a small, quiet town in Georgia, life moved at a slow pace. The streets were lined with old oak trees and the air carried the faint scent of pine. But beneath this peaceful exterior lay deep-rooted tensions that had simmered for decades. The town was divided, racially, economically, and socially. At the center of these divisions stood the local police department, often accused of bias and misconduct. For years, residents whispered about unfair treatment, but nothing ever seemed to change. One chilly Monday morning, the calm of the town was disrupted by an event that would shake its very foundation. Maya Johnson, a young black woman with dreams, as vast as the sky, stepped into the county courthouse. She wasn't there because she was in trouble or involved in any legal matter. Instead, she was a law student interning with a well-known civil rights attorney. Her assignment for the day was straightforward: observe court proceedings and take detailed notes. It was supposed to be a routine task, one that would give her valuable experience for her future career. Maya dressed carefully that morning, choosing a modest blouse and skirt to present herself professionally. Despite her confidence, she couldn't help but feel out of place as she entered the courthouse. The room buzzed with activity, filled with lawyers in sharp suits, clerks shuffling, papers and bailiffs standing guard. As she made her way toward the courtroom, Officer Greg Thompson approached her. He was a tall, burly white man known for his gruff demeanor and short temper. His reputation preceded him. He was infamous for picking on people he deemed suspicious. "Officer," Thompson stopped Maya near the entrance, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. His gaze lingered on her outfit, then shifted to her face. "Who are you?" he barked, his tone dripping with suspicion. Maya remained calm, explaining that she was a law student interning with the civil rights attorney, who would be appearing in court later that day. She reached into her bag and pulled out her driver's license and internship badge, handing them over without hesitation. But instead of examining her credentials, Officer Thompson sneered. "You don't look like you belong here," he said, his voice loud enough for nearby bystanders to hear. Maya felt her cheeks flush, but she kept her composure. She tried again to explain her presence, emphasizing that she had permission to be in the courthouse. Officer Thompson didn't listen. Instead, he grew more aggressive, accusing her of being disrespectful and uncooperative. Things escalated quickly. In a shocking move, Officer Thompson grabbed the collar of Maya's blouse, claiming it was obstructing his view. Before Maya could react, he produced a pair of scissors from his utility belt and began cutting her shirt open. The sound of fabric tearing echoed through the hallway, drawing gasps from those nearby. Maya froze, too stunned to protest. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Clutching the remnants of her shirt around her shoulders, she stepped back, trying to shield herself from further humiliation. The scene left everyone in shock. Some witnesses turned away, unable to watch. Others stared in disbelief, unsure of what to do. A few brave souls approached Maya afterward, offering words of comfort or quietly expressing outrage. Word of the incident spread rapidly throughout the courthouse. By lunchtime, the story had reached nearly every corner of the building. Whispers filled the hallways as people debated what they had seen or heard about secondhand. For Maya, the hours that followed were a blur. She retreated to a quiet corner of the courthouse, trying to process what had happened. Her initial instinct was to leave, to escape the judgmental stares and hushed conversations, but something inside her urged her to stay. This wasn't just about her. It was about standing up against injustice. Several people approached her during this time, each offering different advice. Some encouraged her to file a formal complaint, while others warned her against making waves, fearing retaliation from the police department. Meanwhile, Officer Thompson acted as if nothing unusual had occurred. He continued his duties, chatting casually with colleagues and even laughing about the weird stuff that happened in the courthouse. To him, the incident was already forgotten, a minor inconvenience in his day. Little did he know, however, that his actions had set off a chain reaction that would soon come back to haunt him. As the afternoon wore on, anticipation built among those who knew what had transpired earlier. They wondered how, if at all, the situation would be addressed. What none of them realized was that fate had something extraordinary in store. That same afternoon, Judge Eleanor Davis, a highly respected figure in the legal community, took the bench for the next session. What Officer Thompson didn't know, and what no one else expected, was that Maya had been invited to sit beside Judge Davis during deliberations as part of her internship program. When Judge Davis entered the courtroom, Maya followed closely, behind, still wearing her damaged shirt. Gasps rippled through the gallery as people caught sight of her condition. All eyes turned to Officer Thompson, who froze mid-step, his face pale with shock. For the first time in his life, he found himself, utterly powerless, caught in the spotlight of accountability, and in that moment the entire dynamic of the courthouse shifted, setting the stage for a reckoning that would leave a lasting impact on everyone involved. This was only the beginning of a story that would challenge assumptions, expose prejudices, and ultimately inspire change. But for now, the tension in the air was palpable, and the outcome remained uncertain. Judge Eleanor Davis was a woman who commanded respect the moment she entered a room. Her sharp eyes missed nothing, and her presence carried an air of authority that silenced even the most unruly courtrooms. That afternoon, as she took her seat, on the bench the atmosphere in the courthouse shifted instantly. The murmurs that had filled the room died down, replaced by an eerie stillness. Everyone knew Judge Davis wasn't someone to cross. Her reputation for fairness and integrity was unmatched. But today, there was something different about her demeanor. She seemed unusually focused, almost as if she were waiting for something, or someone. As Maya followed Judge Davis into the courtroom, heads turned. The torn fabric of her blouse was impossible to ignore, and whispers erupted once again. Some people looked away, embarrassed by the sight. Others stared openly, their expressions a mix of pity and anger. Officer Thompson, who had been leaning casually against the wall, suddenly straightened up. His face went pale when he realized what was happening. He had assumed Maya was just another intern, someone insignificant whose humiliation could be brushed aside. But now, seeing her walk confidently behind Judge Davis, he began to understand the gravity of his earlier actions. Judge Davis didn't waste time addressing the elephant in the room. After calling the court to order, she fixed her steely gaze on Officer Thompson. "Before we proceed," she said, her voice firm and unwavering, "I want an explanation for why Miss Johnson is dressed this way." The words hung in the air like thunderclouds, heavy with unspoken accusations. Every person in the room held their breath, waiting to see how Officer Thompson would respond. The officer fumbled for words, his usual bravado crumbling under the weight of Judge Davis's glare. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead as he stammered through a half-hearted excuse. "Your Honor, I was conducting routine security checks," he began, his voice trembling. "Her attire obstructed my view, so I had to ensure compliance." He paused, searching for support from his fellow officers, but none met his gaze. Instead, they avoided looking at him altogether, clearly distancing themselves from the situation. Judge Davis listened silently, her expression unreadable. When Officer Thompson finally stopped speaking, she leaned forward slightly, her hands resting on the bench. "Let me make one thing very clear," she said, her tone icy. "This is my courtroom, and I will not tolerate any act of discrimination or abuse of power under my watch. What you did today was not only unprofessional, it was illegal." Her words cut through the room like a knife, leaving no room for argument. Turning to a nearby bailiff, Judge Davis gave a simple instruction. "Escort Officer Thompson out of the courtroom pending further investigation." The command sent shockwaves through the gallery. People exchanged glances, some nodding approvingly while others whispered in disbelief. For Officer Thompson, the moment was surreal. Never in his career had he faced such public humiliation. As the bailiff approached him, he hesitated as if hoping someone might intervene. But no one did. With his head bowed, he allowed himself to be led away, his confidence shattered. The courtroom buzzed with activity after Officer Thompson's removal. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks, capturing every detail of the unfolding drama. Lawyers huddled together discussing the implications of the judge's decision. Meanwhile, Maya sat quietly beside Judge Davis, trying to process everything that had happened. She felt a mix of emotions, relief that justice was being served, but also anger at the injustice she had endured. Despite the whirlwind around her, she remained composed, determined not to let the incident define her. Word of the confrontation spread quickly beyond the courthouse walls. By evening, local news outlets had picked up the story, turning it into a topic of heated discussion across social media platforms. Headlines blared phrases like, "Racist cop humiliates intern," and "Judge takes stand against police brutality." Comment sections exploded with opinions, ranging from outrage to skepticism. Supporters praised Judge Davis for taking decisive action, while critics accused her of overreacting. Some even defended Officer Thompson, claiming he was simply doing his job. Amidst the chaos, Maya found herself thrust into the spotlight. Friends, family, and strangers reached out to offer their support. Many shared similar stories of mistreatment at the hands of law enforcement, validating her experience and fueling her determination to fight for change. Yet, not all reactions were positive. Anonymous trolls targeted her online, questioning her version of events and accusing her of exaggerating the incident for attention. Despite the negativity, Maya refused to let it deter her. If anything, it strengthened her resolve to use her voice for good. Officer Thompson, on the other hand, faced mounting pressure both professionally and personally. Internal Affairs launched an investigation into his conduct, uncovering a troubling pattern of behavior. Complaints against him dated back years, detailing incidents of racial profiling, excessive force, and verbal abuse. Yet, until now, none of these allegations had been taken seriously. Facing suspension and potential termination, he issued a public apology, though many dismissed it as insincere. His colleagues distanced themselves, fearing guilt by association, and his once stellar reputation crumbled overnight. For Judge Davis, the day marked a pivotal moment in her career. Known for her commitment to justice, she saw this case as an opportunity to address systemic issues within the legal system. In private conversations with Maya, she encouraged her to pursue a career in law, emphasizing the importance of representation and advocacy. "You have a unique perspective," Judge Davis told her. "Don't let anyone silence your voice." As the sun set over the small Georgia town, the courthouse emptied, leaving behind echoes of the day's events. For Maya, the experience was far from over. It had ignited a fire within her, a desire to challenge the status quo and fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Though the road ahead would be difficult, she knew she wasn't alone. With Judge Davis as her mentor and a community rallying behind her, she was ready to take the next step toward creating meaningful change. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would transform not only her life but also the lives of countless others. The ripple effects of that single day would continue to unfold, shaping the future of the town, and perhaps even inspiring change on a much larger scale. The days following the courthouse incident were a whirlwind for Maya Johnson. The story of how Officer Greg Thompson had humiliated her and how Judge Eleanor Davis had intervened became national news almost overnight. Television networks picked up the story, talk show hosts debated it on air, and hashtags like "Sign Justice for Maya" trended across social media platforms. For Maya, the sudden attention was overwhelming. She hadn't expected her experience to resonate so deeply with so many people. Yet as messages poured in from strangers sharing their own stories of discrimination and injustice, she began to realize that her ordeal was more than just a personal tragedy. It was a reflection of broader societal issues. Despite the outpouring of support, not everyone was on her side. Critics emerged, questioning whether Maya's account was exaggerated or if Officer Thompson's actions had been justified. Some argued that he was simply enforcing security protocols, while others dismissed the incident as a misunderstanding. Online trolls targeted her relentlessly, posting hateful comments and spreading misinformation about her character. At times, the negativity felt suffocating, but Maya refused to let it break her spirit. With the help of Judge Davis, who became both a mentor and a pillar of strength, she learned to navigate the storm with grace and resilience. Judge Davis played a crucial role in guiding Maya through this tumultuous period. Recognizing the young woman's potential, she encouraged Maya to channel her pain into purpose. "You have a choice," Judge Davis told her one evening during a private meeting. "You can let this define you, or you can use it as fuel to create change. The world needs voices like yours, voices that demand accountability and push for progress." These words stayed with Maya, inspiring her to take action rather than retreat into silence. Meanwhile, the fallout for Officer Thompson continued to escalate. Internal investigations revealed a disturbing pattern of misconduct stretching back years. Complaints against him included allegations of racial profiling, verbal abuse, and even physical violence. What shocked many was how these complaints had been ignored or swept under the rug by higher-ups within the police department. Now, under intense scrutiny, the department had no choice but to act. Officer Thompson was placed on administrative leave pending further review, and disciplinary hearings were scheduled to determine his future. As details of his past behavior came to light, public opinion turned sharply against him. Former colleagues distanced themselves, fearing association with his tarnished reputation. Even friends and family members struggled to defend him, unable to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the image portrayed in the media. For Officer Thompson, the weight of isolation grew heavier each day. Once a figure of authority and respect, he now found himself ostracized and vilified, a stark reminder of how quickly power could shift. Back at the courthouse, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as possible given the circumstances. Judge Davis resumed her duties, presiding over cases with the same unwavering commitment to fairness that had earned her widespread admiration. Yet behind closed doors, she worked tirelessly to ensure that Maya's case didn't fade into obscurity. She collaborated with civil rights organizations, legal experts, and community leaders to address systemic issues within the justice system. Together, they drafted proposals for reform, advocating for stricter oversight of law enforcement and greater protections for marginalized groups. Maya, too, threw herself into work. Determined to make the most of her internship, she immersed herself in research and case studies, learning everything she could about civil rights law. Her passion caught the attention of her supervising attorney, who praised her dedication and offered to mentor her further. "You're going to be a force to reckon with," he told her one afternoon after a particularly insightful discussion. "This town needs someone like you." Inspired by the encouragement she received, Maya decided to take her advocacy beyond the courthouse. She began speaking at local community events, sharing her story and urging others to stand up against injustice. Her speeches were raw and heartfelt, drawing standing ovations from audiences who connected with her message of hope and resilience. Social media amplified her reach, allowing her to connect with people far beyond the borders of her small Georgia town. One evening, as Maya prepared for yet another speaking engagement, Judge Davis stopped by her apartment unannounced. Carrying a folder filled with documents, she greeted Maya with a warm smile. "I think it's time you saw these," she said, handing over the papers. Inside were letters written by individuals who had been inspired by Maya's courage. Some were survivors of police brutality. Others were activists fighting for equality. Each letter expressed gratitude for Maya's bravery and urged her to keep pushing forward. Tears welled up in Maya's eyes as she read through the letters. For the first time since the incident, she allowed herself to fully acknowledge the impact she was having. It wasn't just about her anymore, it was about all the people counting on her to keep fighting. That night, as she sat alone reflecting on everything that had happened, she made a promise to herself. She would dedicate her life to creating a fairer, more equitable society. But the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. As weeks turned into months, Maya faced new challenges. Critics continued to attack her credibility, and some even attempted to discredit her story altogether. Legal battles loomed on the horizon, promising to test her resolve. Yet with Judge Davis by her side, and a growing network of supporters, cheering her on, Maya remained steadfast. She knew that change wouldn't come overnight, but she also knew that every step forward mattered. In the meantime, the town itself began to transform. Conversations about race, privilege, and accountability became more common, sparking long overdue discussions among residents. Community leaders organized workshops and forums to educate people about implicit bias and systemic racism. Even the police department, under pressure from both internal and external forces, implemented reforms aimed at improving transparency and accountability. While progress was slow, it was undeniable, a sign that Maya's courage had sparked something bigger than anyone could have imagined. As spring approached, bringing with it warmer weather and renewed optimism, Maya stood on the steps of the courthouse where her journey had begun. Looking out at the crowd gathered for a rally she had helped organize, she felt a surge of pride. People of all ages, races, and backgrounds had come together to demand justice and equality. Among them were faces she recognized, friends, mentors, and allies who had supported her every step of the way. And though the scars of her experience still lingered, they no longer defined her. Instead, they served as reminders of her strength and determination. With a deep breath, Maya stepped up to the microphone. The crowd fell silent, eager to hear what she had to say. "This isn't just my story," she began, her voice steady and clear. "It's our story, a story of resilience, unity, and hope. Together, we can build a better future. Together, we can make sure no one else has to endure what I did." As cheers erupted around her, Maya smiled, knowing that her fight was far from over, but also knowing that she wasn't alone. As the weeks turned into months, Maya Johnson's life transformed in ways she could never have imagined. The incident at the courthouse had thrust her into the spotlight, but instead of shrinking away, she embraced her newfound role as an advocate for justice. Her speeches at community events became a beacon of hope for many who felt voiceless. People from all walks of life, students, activists, victims of discrimination, reached out to her, sharing their stories and seeking guidance. Maya listened intently to each one, her heart swelling with determination to make a difference. Judge Eleanor Davis continued to play a pivotal role in shaping Maya's journey. Their mentor-mentee relationship deepened as they worked together on various initiatives aimed at addressing systemic racism within the legal system. Judge Davis introduced Maya to influential figures in the civil rights movement, connecting her with lawyers, academics, and grassroots organizers who were already fighting the same battles. These connections opened doors Maya hadn't even known existed, giving her access to resources and platforms that amplified her voice. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of research and preparation for an upcoming panel discussion, Maya sat across from Judge Davis in her modest office. The room was filled with stacks of law books, framed certificates, and photographs of landmark cases she had presided over. "Maya," Judge Davis said, leaning forward with a thoughtful expression, "you've come so far in such a short time, but I want you to think about your long-term goals. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? 10 years? The question caught Maya off guard. She had been so focused on surviving the present moment that she hadn't allowed herself to dream about the future. After a brief pause, she replied, "I want to be a prosecutor, one who specializes in civil rights cases. I want to hold people accountable when they abuse their power, and I want to help those who feel like the system has failed them." Judge Davis nodded approvingly. "That's a noble goal, Maya, and it's not just possible. It's inevitable if you stay committed. But remember, being a prosecutor isn't just about winning cases. It's about fairness, empathy, and understanding the human stories behind the laws we enforce. You'll face resistance, skepticism, and moments of doubt. But if you keep your values intact, you'll inspire others to follow your lead." Encouraged by these words, Maya threw herself into her studies with renewed vigor. She excelled in her classes, earning top grades and impressing her professors with her sharp legal mind and unwavering dedication. Her internship expanded beyond observing court proceedings. She began assisting with case files, drafting motions, and even participating in strategy sessions. Each task brought her closer to her dream of becoming a lawyer, and more importantly, a change maker. Meanwhile, Officer Greg Thompson's world continued to unravel. The disciplinary hearings against him dragged on, exposing layer upon layer of misconduct. Witnesses came forward, recounting incidents where he had used excessive force or displayed blatant bias. One particularly damning testimony came from a young Latino man who described how Officer Thompson had stopped him without cause, searched his car, and then mocked him for speaking Spanish. The testimony struck a chord with the public, reigniting outrage over police brutality and racial profiling. As evidence mounted against him, Officer Thompson grew increasingly desperate. He hired a high-profile attorney to defend him, hoping to salvage what remained of his career. But no amount of legal maneuvering could erase the truth. In the end, the review board found him guilty of multiple violations, including assault, harassment, and violation of civil rights. He was stripped of his badge and banned from working in law enforcement ever again. For many, this verdict was a victory, a sign that accountability was finally within reach. Yet for Maya, it was bittersweet. While she was glad that justice had been served, she couldn't shake the feeling that the system itself was still broken. Stripping one officer of his badge wouldn't fix decades of systemic oppression. Real change required deeper reforms, changes that went beyond individual accountability to address the root causes of inequality. Determined to push for broader reforms, Maya collaborated with Judge Davis and other advocates to draft a comprehensive proposal for police accountability. The document included recommendations for mandatory bias training, body cameras for all officers, independent oversight committees, and stricter penalties for misconduct. They presented the proposal to local government officials, urging them to adopt it as part of a larger effort to rebuild trust between law enforcement and the community. To their surprise, the proposal gained traction quickly. Community leaders rallied around it, organizing town hall meetings to discuss its implementation. Local media covered the initiative extensively, highlighting its potential to create lasting change. Even some members of the police department expressed cautious support, acknowledging that reform was necessary to restore public confidence. But progress wasn't without its challenges. Opponents of the proposal argued that it placed undue restrictions on law enforcement and hindered their ability to protect the community. Others dismissed it as unnecessary, claiming that incidents like Maya's were isolated anomalies rather than symptoms of a larger problem. Despite these obstacles, Maya refused to back down. She attended every meeting, wrote op-eds for newspapers, and engaged in debates with critics, always staying true to her message of fairness and transparency. As Kaiwai, the proposal moved closer to adoption. Maya's efforts earned her recognition beyond her hometown. National civil rights organizations invited her to speak at conferences and rallies, amplifying her platform on a much larger scale. Her story resonated with audiences across the country, inspiring others to take action in their own communities. For the first time, Maya realized the full extent of her influence and the responsibility that came with it. Back home, the transformation of the small Georgia town continued. Conversations about race and privilege became more common, breaking down barriers that had long divided residents. Schools incorporated lessons on diversity and inclusion into their curriculums, while businesses pledged to hire more inclusively. Even the police department, once resistant to change, began implementing some of the reforms outlined in Maya's proposal. Yet, amidst all the progress, Maya remained grounded. She knew that real change took time and persistence. There would be setbacks, moments of frustration, and days when the weight of the fight felt overwhelming. But she also knew that every step forward mattered, no matter how small. One crisp autumn morning, as Maya prepared to leave for another community event, she paused to look at herself in the mirror. Gone was the timid intern who had walked into the courthouse months ago, unsure of her place in the world. In her place stood a confident, determined woman ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. Smiling faintly, she adjusted her blazer and grabbed her notes before heading out the door. When she arrived at the venue, she was greeted by a sea of familiar faces, friends, mentors, and allies who had supported her throughout her journey. Among them was Judge Davis, who gave her a proud nod as she took the stage. As Maya stepped up to the microphone, the crowd erupted in applause. Taking a deep breath, she began her speech, her voice steady and clear. "This is just the beginning," she said, looking out at the diverse audience before her. "We've made incredible strides, but there's still so much work to be done. Together we can create a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. A world where justice truly is blind. Let's keep pushing forward because our voices matter. Our actions matter and our future depends on it." As cheers echoed around her, Maya felt a surge of gratitude for the people standing beside her, for the lessons she had learned, and for the resilience that had carried her through the darkest moments. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she wasn't alone. With unwavering determination and a growing army of supporters, she was ready to face whatever came next. Months turned into years, and Maya Johnson's journey evolved in ways that even she hadn't anticipated. What began as a single act of humiliation at the hands of Officer Greg Thompson had transformed into a lifelong mission to challenge systemic injustice. Her name became synonymous with resilience and determination, inspiring countless others to join her fight for equality. The small Georgia town where it all began was now a symbol of hope, a place where change, though slow and difficult, was happening. Maya graduated from law school at the top of her class, earning accolades for her academic achievements and unwavering commitment to civil rights. Her thesis, titled "Justice Redefined: Addressing Systemic Racism in the Legal System," received widespread praise and was later published in several legal journals. It wasn't just an academic paper, it was a blueprint for reform, outlining practical steps to dismantle discriminatory practices within institutions of power. Judge Eleanor Davis, who had been instrumental in mentoring Maya throughout her studies, beamed with pride as she watched her former intern cross the stage to receive her diploma. "You're going to change the world," Judge Davis whispered during their celebratory dinner that evening. "And I'll be here cheering you on every step of the way." True to her word, Maya wasted no time putting her education into action. After passing the bar exam with flying colors, she accepted a position as an assistant district attorney in the same county where she had once been humiliated. For many, this decision seemed poetic, returning to the very courthouse where her ordeal had unfolded, but this time as a prosecutor wielding the power to seek justice. Her first day on the job marked a full-circle moment, one that filled her with both excitement and nerves. As Maya settled into her new role, she quickly earned a reputation for being meticulous, compassionate, and unyielding. She approached each case not just as a legal matter, but as an opportunity to address deeper societal issues. Whether prosecuting police misconduct or advocating for victims of hate crimes, she brought a unique perspective shaped by her own experiences. Her courtroom demeanor commanded respect, blending professionalism with empathy in a way that resonated with judges, juries, and even defendants. It was during her second year as a prosecutor that fate intervened once again. One morning, as Maya reviewed the day's docket, she recognized a familiar name: Greg Thompson. The disgraced ex-officer, stripped of his badge and reduced to a shadow of his former self, now stood accused of multiple charges stemming from a drunken altercation at a local bar. Witnesses claimed he had lashed out violently after being confronted about his past actions, injuring 2 patrons in the process. As Maya read through the details of the case, her heart raced. This was the moment she had unknowingly prepared for all along, the chance to face her tormentor not as a victim, but as a representative of justice. The trial drew massive attention, both locally and nationally. News outlets framed it as a reckoning, a test of whether the system could hold someone like Greg Thompson accountable without bias or leniency. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse daily, some demanding harsh punishment for Thompson, others questioning whether he deserved any sympathy given his fall from grace. Inside the courtroom, tensions ran high as lawyers argued over evidence, witnesses testified under oath, and the judge reminded everyone to remain impartial. For Maya, the experience was emotionally charged. Sitting across from Thompson, who now looked haggard and defeated, stirred up memories she thought she had buried. Yet she refused to let personal feelings cloud her judgment. Every decision she made, from selecting jurors to presenting evidence, was guided by fairness and objectivity. She reminded herself repeatedly that this wasn't about revenge. It was about ensuring accountability and preventing future harm. During closing arguments, Maya delivered a powerful speech that left an indelible mark on everyone present. Standing before the jury, she recounted the events of that fateful day in the courthouse, not to evoke pity but to illustrate the broader implications of unchecked prejudice. "This isn't just about one man's mistakes," she said, her voice steady, yet impassioned. "It's about the impact those mistakes have on individuals, communities, and our collective faith in justice. We cannot move forward unless we confront the truth head-on and hold ourselves accountable for creating a better future." Her words struck a chord with the jury, who deliberated for less than a day before delivering a guilty verdict. Thompson was convicted on charges of assault and disorderly conduct, sentenced to 3 years in prison, and ordered to undergo mandatory counseling. While the sentence might have seemed lenient to some, Maya viewed it as a necessary step toward healing. Punishment alone wouldn't fix the problem. Rehabilitation and education were equally important. The outcome of the trial sent shockwaves through the community. Some celebrated it as a triumph of justice, while others warned against complacency. For Maya, it reinforced her belief that real change required constant vigilance. Winning one battle didn't mean the war was over. It meant there was still more work to be done. In the aftermath of the trial, Maya continued to push for reforms both locally and nationally. Her proposal for police accountability, which had gained traction years earlier, served as a model for similar initiatives across the country. Cities adopted policies inspired by her recommendations, implementing body cameras, independent oversight, committees, and stricter disciplinary measures for misconduct. Law enforcement agencies, once resistant to change, began embracing these reforms as essential tools for rebuilding trust with the public. But perhaps Maya's greatest legacy was the ripple effect she created among young activists and aspiring lawyers. Her story inspired a new generation to pursue careers in law and advocacy, driven by the belief that they too could make a difference. Schools started naming scholarships after her, and universities invited her to deliver commencement speeches. Each time she spoke, she emphasized the importance of perseverance, integrity, and compassion. "Change doesn't happen overnight," she often said. "But if we stay committed to doing what's right, we can create a world where everyone has a fair shot at justice." Judge Davis, now retired, remained a close confidant and friend. Together, they founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to mentoring minority students interested in law. The program provided scholarships, internships, and networking opportunities, helping bridge the gap between marginalized communities and the legal profession. Watching Maya interact with these young minds filled Judge Davis with immense pride. "She's changing lives," she told friends and colleagues, "and she's doing it with the same courage and humility that brought her here." Despite her accomplishments, Maya never lost sight of her roots. She returned frequently to her hometown, visiting family and reconnecting with old friends. On weekends, she volunteered at local shelters and youth centers, sharing her story with anyone willing to listen. She believed strongly in giving back to the community that had shaped her, reminding people that success was meaningless unless shared with others. As the years went by, Maya's influence extended far beyond the courtroom. She authored books, hosted podcasts, and appeared on television shows to discuss issues of race, privilege, and justice. Her message remained consistent. True equality required effort from everyone, not just lawmakers or activists, but ordinary citizens willing to challenge their own biases and advocate for change. One evening, as Maya sat on her porch watching the sunset, she reflected on how far she had come. From the young woman humiliated in a courthouse hallway to a respected prosecutor and advocate, her journey had been anything but easy. Yet through every obstacle, she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. The scars of her past would always remain, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they served as reminders of her resilience and of the countless lives she had touched along the way. With a contented smile, Maya leaned back in her chair, feeling grateful for the path she had walked. She knew the fight for justice was far from over, but she also knew she wasn't alone. Surrounded by allies, mentors, and supporters, She was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For Maya Johnson, the road to justice was a marathon, not a sprint, and she was just getting started. Years passed, and Maya Johnson's legacy continued to grow, extending far beyond the small Georgia town where her journey had begun. Her name became a symbol of hope and resilience, a reminder that even in the face of injustice, one person's courage could spark meaningful change. Yet for all her accomplishments, Maya never sought fame or recognition. Her focus remained steadfast on creating a fairer, more equitable world, a mission she pursued with unwavering determination. By the time Maya reached her mid-30s, she had become a household name across the country. Her books, including Courage in the Courtroom, A Journey Toward Justice, topped bestseller lists, offering readers an intimate look at her struggles and triumphs. Through her writing, she shared not only her personal story, but also practical advice for navigating systemic challenges. Justice isn't something you wait for, she wrote in one chapter. It's something you fight for every single day. Her advocacy work took her to cities and towns nationwide, where she spoke at conferences, led workshops, and mentored young activists. She traveled tirelessly, often spending weeks away from home, yet she never complained. Each interaction, whether it was speaking to a packed auditorium or sitting down with a single student, reinforced her belief in the power of collective action. Change starts with us, she would say during these sessions. Every voice matters, no matter how small it may seem. Back in her hometown, the impact of Maya's efforts was undeniable. The police department, once mired in controversy, had undergone significant transformation. New leadership brought fresh perspectives, prioritizing community engagement and transparency. Officers participated in regular bias training sessions, and body cameras became standard equipment. Independent oversight committees reviewed complaints against law enforcement, ensuring accountability at every level. Crime rates dropped, and trust between residents and police improved, a testament to the reforms Maya had championed. The courthouse itself underwent renovations, both physical and symbolic. A mural depicting scenes of justice and equality now adorned its walls, painted by local artists inspired by Maya's story. Inside, plaques honored trailblazers like Judge Eleanor Davis and other pioneers who had fought for fairness within the legal system. On special occasions such as Law Day or Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the courthouse hosted events celebrating progress while acknowledging the work still needed to achieve true equity. Maya's nonprofit organization flourished under her guidance, providing scholarships and mentorship programs to hundreds of aspiring lawyers from marginalized communities. Many of these students went on to excel in their careers, carrying forward Maya's vision of a diverse and inclusive legal profession. One former mentee, Jasmine Carter, became the youngest judge ever appointed in the state. An achievement Maya celebrated as proof that representation mattered. Despite her success, Maya remained humble, always attributing her accomplishments to those who had supported her along the way. Judge Davis, now in her 80s, continued to serve as a guiding light, offering wisdom whenever Maya faced self-doubt. "You've already done so much," Judge Davis told her during one of their weekly calls. "But don't forget to take care of yourself too. Change takes time and you're allowed to rest." Rest, however, wasn't something Maya did often. Her days were filled with meetings, speeches, and late-night research sessions. Yet she found joy in the chaos, knowing that each task brought her closer to her goals. Even when critics questioned her methods or accused her of being too idealistic, she shrugged off their negativity. "They can say what they want," she told a reporter during an interview. "But I know why I'm doing this, and that's enough for me." One of Maya's proudest achievements came when Congress passed landmark legislation addressing systemic racism in law enforcement. Known as the Justice Reform Act, the bill incorporated many of the recommendations Maya had outlined in her early proposals. It mandated federal oversight of police departments, increased funding for community-based programs, and established stricter penalties for civil rights violations. When President signed the act into law, Maya stood beside him on stage, tears streaming down her face. "This is just the beginning," she said during her speech. Let's keep building a future where everyone feels safe, respected, and valued. As the years rolled on, Maya began to think about her next chapter. Though she loved her work as a prosecutor, she felt drawn to academia, eager to share her knowledge with future generations. After months of deliberation, she accepted a teaching position at a prestigious university, where she developed courses on civil rights law and social justice reform. Her classes quickly became some of the most popular on campus, attracting students from diverse backgrounds eager to learn from her experiences. Teaching proved to be incredibly fulfilling for Maya. Watching her students debate passionately, challenge assumptions, and develop innovative solutions reminded her of why she had chosen this path in the first place. "You're the ones who will carry the torch," she told them during her final lecture of the semester. "Don't let anyone tell you your dreams are impossible. If I can do it, so can you." In her personal life, Maya found balance and happiness. She married Marcus Reed, a journalist who had covered her story early in her career and become a close friend over the years. Together, they adopted 2 children, instilling in them the values of empathy, integrity, and perseverance. On weekends, the family volunteered at local shelters, continuing Maya's tradition of giving back to the community. Though retired from active legal practice, Judge Davis remained a beloved figure in Maya's life. They spent countless afternoons reminiscing about old times, sharing stories and dreaming about the future. "You've done more than I ever imagined," Judge Davis told her one sunny afternoon as they sat on the porch sipping tea. "But don't stop now. There's still so much work to be done." Maya smiled, nodding in agreement. She knew Judge Davis was right. The fight for justice was ongoing. But she also knew that the groundwork she and others had laid would inspire generations to come. As she looked out at the horizon, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the lessons learned, the lives touched, and the possibilities ahead. That evening, as Maya tucked her children into bed, she paused to reflect on her journey. From the young woman humiliated in a courthouse hallway to a respected advocate for justice, she had traveled a long and winding road. Along the way, she had faced fear, doubt, and adversity, but she had also discovered strength, purpose, and hope. The DUI scars of her past would always remain, but they no longer weighed her down. Instead, they served as reminders of how far she had come and how much further she could go. With a contented sigh, Maya turned off the light and stepped into the hallway, closing the door softly behind her. As she walked downstairs, she glanced at the framed photograph on the wall. A picture of her standing beside Judge Davis on the courthouse steps, smiling brightly. It was a moment frozen in time, a testament to the bond they shared and the change they had created together. Maya's story didn't end there. It couldn't. Justice was a lifelong pursuit, one that required constant effort and vigilance. But, as she poured herself a cup of tea and settled onto the couch, she felt at peace. She had done her part, and she trusted that others would continue the fight. For Maya Johnson, the road to justice wasn't just a destination. It was a journey, one she embraced wholeheartedly, knowing that every step mattered. And so, with renewed energy and endless optimism, Maya prepared for whatever lay ahead. The world was changing, slowly but surely, and she was proud to be part of it.